Hello YouTube, it's BT Racing. This week I'm in the seat of a 2013 Hyundai Genesis sedan. This is the 3.6, not the 8-cylinder, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a review since this is this car's last drive. This car is my father's car, and today it is being traded for a new car. I'm sure I'll do a video on that new car as well. And he's driving my car and I'm driving his car, and he requested that the car's last drive be recorded. And while it's being recorded, I might as well give you my thoughts on this car. So the first thing you're going to notice in these cars is how big they are much bigger than your average family sedan. In fact, they're quite large and almost annoying to drive. My dad is flying in my car through this neighborhood. Oh my goodness. Another thing about these cars is its underestimated power. These cars are actually pretty quick, and even with it not being the 8-cylinder, it still gets up and moves. Let me see if I can screech a little bit of tire leaving here. That was quick. That was over the posted speed limit for this road. Another thing you notice about the car, like right there, is the brakes on this thing. This thing has great brakes. I know that the Genesis Coupe has the Brembos on its R models. This one does not have Brembos, but it still has pretty big brakes up in the front. Like they're big, a lot bigger than you'd think. Another thing you notice kind of immediately as you're just kind of cruising around would be the suspension on this car. The suspension is very soft. It's meant to be kind of a luxury car. This is Hyundai's first attempt at, or I should say first successful attempt at a luxury car. It wasn't meant to be a backroads warrior by any means. It is just something that cruises along highways really, really nice, and it does that perfectly. However, where we live, the back roads, it gets a little dicey. The car feels completely separated from its wheels. It feels like as you're driving, the wheels are connected to the ground, but the rest of the car just kind of floats over top of them, and the car will move or pivot in any way over those wheels, which is kind of unsettling, but it's really comfortable when you're just cruising around. So we're going the back way to the car dealership, take it on some back roads, because as most of my reviews go, you've noticed that they're mostly on back roads, not really highway. Highway doesn't really tell you much about a car, but it'll have a mix of both. So here, I'll toss it in this corner. Right, wow, right there, I got understeer and oversteer. The initial, it wasn't much. I don't know if you could hear it through the mic either, but you could hear the tires chirping, front mostly, and then a little bit of the back. Mostly it started with understeer, hence probably my hilarious face, and then a little bit of oversteer as all the tension traveled to the back of the car, which is unsettling. I'm not used to that at all, and I wasn't really going fast at all through that corner. For example, my dad's driving my car right in front of me, and he obviously had no problem. I'm just playing keep up with him. The car unfortunately feels pretty disconnected from the driver. For example, if you look at the way I'm driving it right now, I look like I'm super relaxed, like I'm sitting in a lazy boy chair, which is what this car was meant for. They didn't intend for you to feel really engaged, I think. And they fixed that with the new Genesis. The new Genesis is tuned by Lotus, and supposedly, I haven't been in one yet, but supposedly they ride completely different than this older generation. The steering is heavy, but easy to use. It doesn't get progressive, it's just heavy throughout. And it's not tiresome either, it keeps the car going in a straight line. The car always wants to go straight. The gas pedal, the way it's actually oriented, I hate when car companies put the pivot point for the pedal at the floor, so the gas pedal gets pushed like this versus like this. I don't like that at all. The brakes, they fortunately feel really good. I always feel extremely confident with the brakes on this car. So good job Hyundai on that one. Now this car, the regular 3.8 sedan, comes equipped with just an open rear diff. It's rear-wheel drive, open rear diff. And it does all right. My dad daily drives it, including snow, and he's never had any issues. He always puts snow tires on it, so it's doable. But I think this thing could have used a limited slip diff. Anytime like you push it too hard in one direction, you just get a boatload of tire spin one way or another. And I know that the R-spec models, even on the sedans, came with limited slip diffs. The aftermarket for these cars it's weird. The aftermarket over in Korea is very big. Here, getting parts for these things in an aftermarket setting is super hard. You can barely find anything. I know my dad on many occasions has thought about upgrading things, but finding the parts that we want are nearly impossible unless you have an importer send them to you. And even then, if you think about who's owning these cars, the people who own them aren't really into modifying. These are owned by typically your older adult, and the car was meant for cruising around. Like anytime I go down south, you see these everywhere. They're as common as your average Sonata. But here up north in Western PA, they're very few and far between because no one wants a big rear-wheel drive sedan. Why not just get a front-wheel drive sedan or just an all-wheel drive one if you can? The power is really good in these things. It never ceases to impress me how much power that they have squeezed out of a 6-cylinder. Unfortunately, I can't do my typical route, as this is this car's last drive. I wish I could have expanded my route a little bit more to give you more feedback, but not today, unfortunately. Another thing you notice about this car is it feels very solid. Everything about it is solid, except the under the skin stuff. When you climb underneath the car, you get a little disappointed. And when you take corners really hard, for example, I get onto a really tight on-ramp onto a highway and you're accelerating, the car twists so much, like the whole chassis of the car twists so much that you can hear the interior pieces of the car cracking as they shift. You can hear things moving. This car could use a whole lot of chassis bracing. The whole chassis twists a lot, and you can feel it. It's really comfortable. Like, you never feel like this ride's harsh. And then the car was probably designed that way in some way to twist a little bit, which is fine. I know trucks do it, and everything else are meant to twist a little bit. But this one went a little too excessive. I feel not confident going into corners hard at all. Going in a straight line is not an issue. This car is like a rocket in a straight line. And if you want to have fun, this car has an 8-speed transmission. If you want to have fun, really the way to do it is by shifting it manually. The gearbox in this thing is geared very close together, and you're not going to have much fun letting the car shift for you. So you should shift it. And here, we'll get on the power here. By the way, I'm being filmed in Mexico, as always. And this car, I mean, I don't know if you can see the car in the back, but I'm absolutely blowing by it. Like, that's quick. That's really quick. And that's what's unexpected. No one thinks that these things are actually kind of fast. You put it on the same level as a Honda Accord or, you know, your average sedan, and it's not. It really isn't. It actually has a decent amount of power. And here I am cruising down a highway now, kind of the last stretch to get there. And this is what this car was made for. You can tell. This car, I mean, I can take my hands off the wheel and let this thing drive itself practically. It goes in a straight line perfectly. It cruises along and soaks up the bump. The bump's really, really nice. The car is extremely quiet. And that's it. When you want to accelerate to pass someone, it does really well. and you would never know you're going as fast as you are. Like my dad right now probably feels like he's hauling in my car. But I feel, I don't know, relaxed. Like it's not a big deal. It is easy to speed in this thing. I myself have received a speeding ticket in this car. Just cruising along the turnpike. Not really paying attention, just cruising along, relaxed, and unbeknownst to me, I was almost doing 30 over the posted speed limit. Another thing you notice, when you hit the power, what my brain wants the car to do and what the car actually does are very different. And it's kind of annoying. And this car can learn your driving habits. It has one of those very tricky learning transmissions. But it's not smart enough. When I hit the gas, it only goes down 1, maybe 2 gears. Now in any other car that's fine, if you have a 5 or 6 speed car, or even like my car, a 4-speed. But this thing has 8 gears. And when I'm cruising along in 8th and I want to go down to 4th, it just doesn't do that big of a shift. And when it does, the gap between, you know, the car going from 8th to 4th and then you accelerating is huge. But once it finds its gear and you start moving, it's really impressive. The thing is, manually shifting it, you have to be pretty engaged to do it. As the RPMs don't change that much when you shift manually. Because the car has 8 gears, its gearing is pretty short. So when I shift from 4th down to 3rd, it only jumped, I don't know, less than 1,000 RPM. From 3,000 to 2,800 between 3rd and 4th. So you have to be pretty quick, especially when you're accelerating really, really hard. There are times when I've gone to manually shift it and I wasn't quick enough. The car has to do it for me sometimes when you're under really, really hard acceleration. Now, the community behind these things exists. You go on Instagram or any forum, there's a following for these, mostly down south where they're prominent. The typical modifications that you see on these things, people lower them to the ground, put them on bags, do the whole VIP, you know, big 3-piece wheels with the big lips on them and tint the windows completely black, you know, the VIP scene. Broke a little bit of traction and we're doing 65. 65 and broke traction. The traction control light went off at 65 miles an hour. That's impressive. I don't care what you're driving. 65 miles an hour and you break traction. I mean, this thing has snow tires on it, so then again, it's not really that impressive, but I mean, it's still 65 miles an hour. And I'm accelerating and breaking traction. That's cool. Well, we have arrived at the car dealership. It was a fun last ride with this car. And I'm glad I got to give this car one more push before it's gone. I miss the car. This is the car I learned to drive in when I had my permit and everything. So I do have a connection with this car slightly. But I'm glad to see it go, to be honest. It was not a car that really fit any of us in our family in terms of personality. It wasn't exactly my dad, it wasn't really me, and it definitely wasn't my mother. The new car hopefully will be exactly what my dad's looking for. I believe that concludes this video. As always, if you'd like to see more reviews, definitely subscribe. And Nick and I are definitely working on more videos for you guys, so hopefully we can keep releasing them every week.